Just over a year ago, I sold my 13900K for a 7800X3D, but why would I do such a thing, and was it worth it? Let's talk about it.
Before that, this video is brought to you by VIPCDKDeals.com. CDK Deals is a website dedicated to getting you the best prices on games and software, and right now you can get a Windows 10 Pro OEM key for an insanely low price. Just find the best price and apply my special discount code GPC20 for an additional 30% off. You can also check out securely with PayPal, and once the payment is cleared, you should get access to the code both in your account as well as in your email. In order to activate the new copy of Windows 10, just search Activate under Windows and type in your key. So if you want to learn more, be sure to click the link in the description below.
Okay, so I've been a long time Intel enjoyer. I've used a ton of their CPUs, especially all the way back from the 4th generation to the 8th generation, and recently I've used their 12th and 13th generation as well. Now, of course, I have used some AMD Ryzen CPUs in the past as well, and I think those were a great option for people when they came out. But for me, Intel was offering, especially with the 12th generation, some really great gaming performance as well as multi-core performance with their P-core plus E-core design, making it the ideal solution for my gaming and editing needs. However, yes, like I mentioned, around a year ago, I did swap from Intel to AMD. Now, there were a number of reasons as to why I did this, but the main one that spurred me on was actually a video which came out from the YouTuber Brian over from Tech Yes City, where he did discuss having some serious issues with latency when it came to Intel's latest generation CPUs with their P plus E-core design. Now, I did try a ton of various different things on the Intel platform to try and solve these issues that I believed I was having at the time, and nothing worked. I even tried things such as shutting off hyper-threading, shutting off P-cores, locking things down, getting rid of the boosting stuff that was going on there, and I even did a full Windows reinstall, and nothing was getting rid of these weird issues such as dragging and dropping files, taking a very long time, and a ton of other problems. Now, I did ultimately move over to AMD, and what I found was a good number of these issues did go away. Now, whether or not this was due to another fresh Windows install or a new motherboard is hard to say, or if it was going to AMD, but I did notice, yes, a bunch of them did actually solve. Now, over time, I did find that all of them were solved, so this could be an indication. It could be partially some issues with drivers coming from NVIDIA, as well as some Windows updates that could have helped resolve these problems. But I did feel like my experience as a whole after a year was a little bit more stable and a little bit more snappy on the AMD platform. Now, a couple other things that I feel like were a positive moving to AMD was the much lower power draw, the slightly higher gaming performance, and the overall much easier build process, not only physically, but also when it comes to RAM. Getting RAM that works really well with the AMD processors seemed a little bit easier on AM5. However, not everything was smooth sailing moving over to AMD. A few things that I didn't like about the process was it does have very long boot times on AM5. Now, there is something called memory context restore you can enable, which does actually cut it down significantly. But for me, even after enabling that, while it does work most of the time, every once in a while, it gives me an absolute heart attack of a start time where it looks like something in my PC has failed. I absolutely hate when that happens. It's not even like a once a week thing. It's a maybe once a month thing, maybe once every other month thing. So when it happens, again, it is a heart attack. And AMD, please, for the love of God, fix this with a microcode update, as this is something that could definitely steer people away from AM5 and is something that I consider to be actually kind of bad, because again, it makes me very anxious when it happens. But again, it's not very often, so not a huge deal. Another thing that I don't like is I feel like the USB stability is a little bit worse. I do get some random audio popping and crackling from time to time. It's not very often at all, but it can happen, and that's something I don't recall happening on Intel. Another thing I didn't like was, while the RAM compatibility in terms of getting the maximum performance out of your chip is easier on AM5 and something I do really like, getting high capacity kits to work on AM5 was a bit of a nightmare. I had to go through, I think it was 3 or 4 boards, as well as 4 different 7800X3Ds if I look at my purchase history correctly, and 3 or 4 different kits of RAM to actually just get 64 gigabytes of DDR5 to confirm work at 6000 megahertz. Yes, all of them would work at 6000 mega transfer out of the box. It would boot, everything would look fine, but I would run tests and inevitably find some failures unless I went in and dialed it way back. And for me, 64 gigabytes is the amount I want for editing and so that was very bizarre and hopefully something that can be improved again with some microcode updates. And the final thing that I don't like, and this goes for Intel and AMD actually, is that not only is there basically no overclocking headroom, but these chips, at least in my opinion, they are on, I think, the edge, the absolute edge of stability. I tried 4 different X3D processors. Every single one of them not only basically could not use curve optimizer whatsoever, even like a -5 offset would completely cause crashing, but even PBO would basically immediately cause crashing within just an hour or 2 of use. I would suddenly run into some issues, which leads me to believe again that these CPUs are pushed to the absolute very edge of stability right out of the box, or at least maybe there are batches of them going out, which could be suffering from these issues. So no problem if you want to run stock, and that's exactly what I'm doing, and it's been working really great. But for Intel, I think they're pushing their CPUs way too far out of the box. There could be potentially some manufacturing issues on top of that, making it far worse, making these issues pop up a lot sooner than they would otherwise. I think that if they weren't having manufacturing issues, which I believe is probably a good chance they are, maybe you'd be seeing issues with 14th gen a couple years in the future, not right now. There's a ton of reports of issues on Intel CPUs, so obviously I'm feeling really good about being on AM5 right now. Again, I'm not going to go super deep into it, but considering the seriously huge amount of reports that we're seeing right now, not only am I glad to be on AM5, but I actually don't think I can recommend any 13th or 14th generation CPUs anymore until Intel comes out and says something about these problems. So overall, my opinion is, again, until Intel says something, as much as I want to be, really excited for Arrow Lake, I'm gonna have to hold off on that excitement until Intel addresses these problems. And for now, I do think I'm very happy that I moved to AM5. It's not all been smooth sailing, but overall it's been a good experience, and I would recommend buying an X3D processor. I think especially the 7800 X3D is an absolute banger and overall is a better CPU than the 13900K, and I would recommend it over a 13900K. I would avoid at this point in time all 13th and 14th generation CPUs until something is said definitively from Intel. But hey, that's just what I think. Do you think that the Ryzen 7000 X3D processors are better than the Intel 13th and 14th generation CPUs? Or do you think that Intel is still the dominant force in the CPU market? Let me know your guys' thoughts in the comments below, and of course, I'll see you in the next video.
If you made it to the end of the video, be sure to drop a like. Every time you do so, AMD and NVIDIA release new GPUs. Also, if you want to see more, check out one of these related videos. You won't be disappointed.